Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Peace and God's blessings be upon you all. Welcome back, esteemed guests. We now resume the celebrations of the World. The permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, His Excellency Tijani Muhammad Bandi, permanent representative of Nigeria, His Excellency Ambassador Munir Akram, esteemed speakers to come forward to the podium. Welcome, esteemed guests. We will open up this session with a statement to be delivered by His Excellency Ambassador Omar Hilal, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Morocco. You have the floor, sir.
Bismillah.
In the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. Peace and God's blessings be on the Prophet and his kin. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, at the outset, I would like to express our gratitude to His Excellency Ambassador and Dr. Abdulaziz Al Wasel, the Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I thank him for his kind invitation to celebrate the journey of the Arabic language in the United Nations for the past 50 years. And I would also like to address expressions of appreciation to His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Al-Washmi, the Secretary General of the King Salman Global Academy for the Arabic Language. I thank him for the hard work that he has done to organize this special celebration, and I would like to speak highly of his efforts to increase knowledge of the Arabic language and its cultural context. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kingdom of Morocco has, alongside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, participated in the drafting and adoption of GA Resolution 3190 on the 18th of December 1973, which stated the Arabic language and added it to the official languages of the United Nations. And here we are today celebrating half a century of active participation by the Arabic language in the work of the United Nations and in setting its priorities in development and peacekeeping and the maintenance of international peace and security. Moreover, the use of the Arabic language went beyond simply using it as an official language of the United Nations and has been adopted by some United Nations agencies and specialized bodies. Celebrating today the passage of 50 years for the adoption of this historic resolution is an important opportunity to remember the status of the Arab language, which represents the identity and the culture of 22 member states of the United Nations. And this language has gone beyond the boundaries of the Arab world and is read and written all over the world. Multilingualism, in addition to it being a source of cultural wealth and diversity, is also a basic value that contributes to the achievement of the United Nations objectives, and it enhances international peace and security and sustainable development. Moreover, multilingualism is an empowering agent for multilateral diplomacy, where the United Nations is the beating heart. For example, peacekeeping operations throughout the Arab world and which speak Arabic require special procedures that include sending civilian and military elements that speak Arabic so that they are better able to communicate with the citizens and better able to effectively implement their mandates. The Arabic language is a main tool of communication. It is a language spoken by over 500 million persons throughout the world. And since this important resolution was adopted, the United Nations worked on developing the use of the Arabic language, including the presence of skilled Arabic speakers in the organization and developing the services of interpretation and translation into Arabic, whether in the official meetings of the organization or in the translation of the United Nations documents in terms of reports and resolutions. Furthermore, the United Nations, its agencies and its bodies, and within their efforts to update and modernize internal and external communication means, launched its different portals and platforms for social media in the Arabic language. And for over 2 decades, the United Nations website underwent a series of updates that kept up with the increased use of the website, especially among Arab and Arabic-speaking audiences. We also value the efforts of the United Nations Organization for Education, Culture and Science to better spread knowledge of the Arabic language, its value and its important role in extending bridges between civilizations and cultures throughout the world. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Arabic language is considered a cornerstone of Moroccan culture and an important element of its rich and diverse identity. Moreover, the Arabic language is the official language of the kingdom as set by the Constitution. And for 12 centuries, the Moroccan state, and since the Idrisid dynasty and until the noble Alawite dynasty, has maintained the Arabic language and enriched it throughout its different uses, be it in politics or diplomacy or the economy or in religious contexts. The Arabic language has constantly allowed us to build bridges between Arab states from the ocean to the Gulf. Moreover, Arabic has unified Islamic peoples, not just in the Arab states, but throughout the world, especially in Africa and Asia and the Indian Ocean. Moreover, the Kingdom of Morocco, and under the leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, makes it important to teach the Arabic language in terms of syntax and knowledge in its educational system, be it the basic educational system or in higher education. With regards to primary education, Moroccan institutions of education, including foreign missions, dedicate an important number of lessons to teach Arabic at the primary and secondary levels. And with regards to higher education, the Minister of Islamic Affairs, and with directions of the Prince of the Faithful, His Majesty King Mohammed VI, implements hybrid programs for traditional education in mosques, which has allowed many Moroccans and residents of the country to learn Arabic and to be able to read it and write it. These programs were developed through using the television and radio channels, as well as the internet and social media. In application of royal will and emanating from the Moroccan appreciation for calligraphy and the important the importance of preserving the cultural role and artistic presence of Arabic, the Ministry of Islamic Affairs every year hosts a contest, a national contest for Arabic calligraphy, and it is an opportunity for the best calligraphers to compete in a way that preserves this important heritage. And because of the care accorded by His Majesty King Mohammed VI to Moroccans in the world, the Ministry of National Education sends hundreds of teachers to several states, especially in Europe, to teach members of the expatriate Moroccan community Arabic. This allows them to maintain an important part of their identity and to entrench the ties with their motherland. Because the Kingdom of Morocco and its sister, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, have a joint desire, and in implementation of the desires of the late King Hassan II and King Fahd, may they both rest in peace, out of their desire to raise the standards of translation, the King Fahd School for Translation was established in 1986. And it is the first center of excellence and the first of its kind in the Arab world that trains professional translators that are specialized in multiple languages, including Arabic. This school has become an important center for highly qualified translators, some of whom were able to join the translation department at the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot speak of developing the Arabic language without recalling the advanced stage that the countries of the region are experiencing and which attracts many foreigners to learn Arabic by visiting our countries or residing in them. And this allows us to keep up with economic development and the universal nature that many states in the region aspire to achieve. Therefore, we, and alongside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, must recall Agenda or Vision 2030 put forth by His Majesty King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, and which he pursues firmly, along with the heir apparent, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This is a strategy that is far-reaching and which will allow the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to achieve its economic, developmental, and humanitarian objectives. It is a vision that will undoubtedly have a positive effect on the foreigners' desire to learn Arabic and to learn Arabic cultural, artistic, and scientific heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, the current condition and the current world situation that is witnessing an increased progress in technology and in communications requires us to exert more efforts to further use the Arabic language and to offer more opportunities to build a tangible image and vision that would lead to the increased use of the Arabic language and in diverse settings, be it at the United Nations or throughout the world. And here, I would like to propose the following suggestions. First, it is important to take advantage of negotiations on the Summit of the Future to speak in a united voice on behalf of the Arab group in order to develop United Nations material, be it spoken or written in Arabic. Second, it is important to work on supporting the DGC's efforts in developing the use of Arab language permanently in the United Nations Global Communications Strategy. Third, we must coordinate to unify our positions as Arab states in negotiations on the United Nations annual budget in order to offer the necessary financial and human resources to make sure that the Arabic language remains supreme in the United Nations. Moreover, it is important to conduct competitions that would honor the children of diplomats as well as United Nations staff who are of Arab descent, and these competitions must include competitions in language, syntax, reading, and calligraphy, and writing. And their importance lies in incentivizing the children of the Arab Diplomatic Corps to learn Arabic and to preserve it. I wish you all success and peace and God's blessings be upon you.
شكرا لك.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And we now will hear a statement delivered by His Excellency Ambassador Tijani Muhammad Bindi, Permanent Representative of Nigeria. You have the floor, sir.
Let me, on behalf of the Permanent Mission of Nigeria, thank our brother, the Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United Nations, and our brother, the Secretary General of the King Salman Global Center for the Study of Arabic Language, and all others who had a hand in this very important commemoration, 50th anniversary. Let me say, on this platform, let me say I am aligned to what all others who have spoken before me have done. Fundamentally, to affirm the supreme importance of the Arabic language to not only global communications, but to what we are in the modern world in terms of its contributions to philosophy, to history, to language, music, literature, the arts, the sciences. Indeed, I was glad that our brother Osama earlier in the day reminded us about really important figures in world scholarship and in world culture that actually were Arabs. And I will add to that reflection to say that when we remember that some of the most important works in the sciences and in philosophy were actually available to us because of Arabic, this is really remarkable. This is extremely important to remind ourselves. Now, we know the importance of Arabic language in terms of commerce today. We know its importance globally in terms of diplomacy. We are here where Arabic is one of the 6 languages that are official languages of the United Nations. These are all basic issues we need to know about. Brother Umar reminded us that about half a billion people speak Arabic. I will add to say that I will put the figure to more than 1 billion. What is my reason? With the number of Muslims who must understand Arabic to some degree, and those who may not be Muslims but who are Arabs or who relate to the Arab world, the numbers are far higher. We know for sure we have 22 countries that are described as Arab-speaking countries. The truth of the matter is that there are far more than these numbers. I say to our colleagues, if Nigeria tomorrow applies to be part of the Arab League, it has a good claim to being so. We have people in Nigeria for whom the first language is Arabic. You may even say it may be dialectical Arabic, but each Arabic is Arabic. It's still Arabic. And so therefore, how did this happen? Let me just also back up to say that some years ago, I led a team to Egypt and insisted that we are going to go to Cairo, to Al-Azhar, to interact with the leadership of Al-Azhar. We discovered in just that one institution, 4,000 Nigerians were registered that year at Al-Azhar. Now, wherever Arabic language is spoken in the world at the highest levels, I bet you there will be Nigerians there. Why is this so? From the 10th century or 11th century, parts of Nigeria have had interactions with Arab traders, and they began to learn Arabic. And by the 12th, 13th century, some leaders in Nigerian area, before Nigeria was created, obviously, had become Muslim, and therefore Arabic became important. It became the language of communication, the language of diplomacy, the language of commerce, and of course scholarship. In particular, with the revivalist movement of Usman Ofodo in 1800s, a large part of West Africa region was Muslim, and Arabic became important, and the production, intellectual production of that area alone is still unsurpassed by any. So to tell you the importance of Arabic to Nigeria, in law, in politics, in diplomacy, we have many kulliyats all over the country where Arabic is taught properly. Now, fundamentally, and the point is to be emphasized, because Arabic is the language of the Quran, every Muslim would aspire to learn Arabic. In particular, because of the emphasis of the religion of Islam on knowledge, everybody would apply himself or herself to learn something. So, on a day like this, where we remember that 50 years ago, it has been agreed to give recognition to the contribution of the Arabic language to many facets of life, all we can say is that it's absolutely important that we're here and to see how communication has been enhanced, how cultures have been matched. In particular, in some local languages in Nigeria, up to 10-15% are loan words from Arabic. And I'm sure in the interface of Arabic with other languages, some of the words that are now Arab are actually from elsewhere. This is extremely important for our world, where we do need to understand better, we do need to communicate better. Let me join all of you in celebrating the 50th anniversary of the adoption by the United Nations of Arabic as an official language of the United Nations. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your valuable input. We move on now to His Excellency Ambassador Munir Akram, the Permanent Representative of Pakistan. You have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. I would like to, first of all, congratulate my brother, His Excellency Abdul Aziz Al Basil, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as His Excellency Al Hashmi, Secretary General of the King Salman Global Academy for Arabic Languages, for organizing this important event to celebrate the Arabic language. Today we commemorate a significant milestone, the 50-year journey of the Arabic language at the United Nations. This commemoration holds immense importance, particularly for the Arab as well as the Muslim nations, including Pakistan. For us, Arabic obviously is not merely a language. It is the vessel that carries the divine words of the Holy Quran. We have lived with Arabic and we have learned from Arabic. And our own language, Urdu, can trace at least 1/4 of its etymology to Arabic. Today, millions of Pakistanis learn Arabic out of conviction and because of their love for Islam. But millions more also learn Arabic because it is the gateway for their livelihood and prosperity, as they are welcomed by the millions, by our brothers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and in other Arabic countries. Therefore, Arabic for Pakistan is an essential reality and objective. The language came to Pakistan a few years after the emergence of Islam itself, when Muhammad bin Qasim landed on the shores of Sindh. And it has never left the subcontinent since. This was the initiation of Islam in South Asia. And with its rich history, Arabic has had profound significance for the peoples of our region. It has played a pivotal role in shaping the cultural, intellectual, and spiritual fabric of countless nations, including in our region. And it has served as a bridge from the Maghreb to China, connecting diverse communities, fostering understanding among different cultures, but as has been said both by my brother Omar and by Tijani, spreading knowledge, being the core of the civilizational impacts that Islam has had throughout history in the world. Nelson Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. Indeed, the Arabic language has touched the hearts of millions, resonating deeply within their souls. It has been a source of solace, enlightenment, and unity for Muslims worldwide. Dear brothers and sisters, in our diverse global community, the United Nations aims to serve as a platform for dialogue, understanding, and cooperation. The inclusion of Arabic as one of the official languages of this organization not only upholds the linguistic diversity of the world, but it also amplifies the voices and aspirations of millions of people in the Arab and Islamic world. And today, the Islamic world is concerned with all the challenges that we are facing, whether it is in Palestine or in Africa. Our effort must be to utilize the Arabic language as a means of conveying our aspirations, of promoting our national interests, of fostering the commerce and industry and trade and investment, which are the key to the future prosperity and peace for all our peoples. We therefore must look forward for an active effort, not only by the Arab countries, but also the Islamic countries and others who are aligned with our aspirations, to promote the greater utilization and more effective utilization of the Arabic language. And as we reflect on the past 50 years of the history of the Arabic language, let us renew our commitment to fostering multilingualism. Together, let us forge a path of unity, understanding, and peace, recognizing that language is not merely a means of communication, but a bridge that connects hearts and minds. Shukran jazeelan.
شكرا.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And we conclude this session with a speech by Her Excellency Ambassador Maritza Chan Valverde, the Permanent Representative of Costa Rica.
Salam alaikum. Queridos amigos.
Dear friends, it is a great honor for Costa Rica to be part of the celebration of 50 years of the adoption of the Arabic language as the 6th official language of the United Nations and the commemoration of its World Day, proclaimed by UNESCO in 2012. The Arabic language is one of the oldest and richest languages in the world. Throughout history, it has gone from being talked about in some corners to being a global phenomenon. As of 2023, more than 20 countries have Arabic as an official or co-official language. Arabic is a language that has left an indelible mark on the history of humanity. It has also left a mark, an indelible mark on science and gastronomy. Arabic is the language of art. There have been many different borrowings to other languages, and Arabic has influenced many different languages, and Spanish is no exception to that. Arabic and Spanish share similar structures and pronunciations. According to Polylingua, both languages rely heavily on trills as well as gutturals. In grammar, both languages rely on verb conjugations and noun-adjective agreement. Arabic has influenced Spanish through loan words and derivations. The Spanish word aceituna comes from the Arabic word zaytun, which means olive. And as aceite, azafrán, azúcar, almohada, many different Spanish words are ultimately derived from Arabic. We understand these bonds that bring us together. And there are many, having a large number of immigrants from Lebanon, the UAE, and other Arab countries, Costa Rica also has one of the largest Muslim communities in Central America, most of whom speak Arabic. Like Spanish, the Arabic language faces countless challenges inside and outside the United Nations. We are facing this reality with the conviction of the need to protect at all costs this vast cultural and linguistic universe that goes beyond geography and encompasses centuries of history. For this reason, Costa Rica calls on all member states, UN agencies, and staff to raise awareness about the legacy of our languages. They provide a set of cultural expressions and transmit identity and values. Costa Rica recognizes that universality and multilateralism are achieved inter alia through multilingualism, and this is the central value and fundamental principle that is enshrined in the UN Charter. Linguistic diversity is an instrument that not only facilitates diplomacy, but also favors dialogue, tolerance, and mutual understanding. One's mother tongue is a natural instrument of thought and communication, an expression of identity and culture. It contributes to the scope of the 3 pillars of our organization: peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. We need to move towards linguistic parity between the 6 official languages. Their use needs to be more frequent and necessary at the UN, and we need to eliminate preferences given to certain languages over others. Having various languages represented helps promote cultural understanding. It helps to break down barriers and build bridges. It means representation. It means empowerment. It means recognition of those people who speak the language in question. We must ensure that we, in so doing, build bridges and closer relations between people. We must preserve this legacy and ensure that we achieve greater international cooperation and promote the harmonization of the efforts of nations with the ultimate goal of building a better future. With that, the Arab population around the world is represented here at the UN. Costa Rica commemorates this milestone as yet another opportunity to foster understanding and cooperation. Thank you.
شكرا لكم سعادة.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I am honored now to ask the Secretary General, Dr. Abdullah Al-Washmi, to come to the podium to present the panelists with their gifts from the King Salman Global Academy for Arabic Language.
شكرا لكم جميعا.
Thank you all. I am now honored to invite His Excellency Dr. Khaled Ad-Dosi to the podium to begin the proceedings of the third session.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. It is one of the greatest pleasures and blessings that Allah has showered us with, including teaching Adam all names and languages before demonstrating them to the angels. This is a very interesting topic that we'll be addressing in the third session. But at the outset, it's my pleasure to call upon Professor Mahmoud Al-Mahmoud from King Salman Global Academy for Arabic Language, and Dr. Fawzi Bukhari, the Saudi Cultural Attaché in the United States, the Saudi Cultural Attaché in the United States, Professor Abdullah Toubi, the Director of the GCC Center for Translation and Arabization, and Dr. Anas Naimi, expert of teaching Arabic to non-Arabic speakers at Cisco, based in Rabat, Morocco. Well, just a while ago, I said that God's blessings that He showered us with, including teaching Adam all names of things, i.e. language. So, can you imagine how life would perpetuate and continue without any means of communication and collaboration between them? Language is one of the cardinal big blessings.
The 48th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. The General Assembly will now consider sub-item B of Agenda Item 3 entitled Report of the Credentials Committee. In this connection, the Assembly has before it a report of the Credentials Committee circulated in document A/78/605 containing a draft resolution entitled Credentials of Representatives of the 78th session of the General Assembly recommended by the committee. I now give the floor to the Chair of the Credentials Committee, Her Excellency Jane Magafalu Kabwe Waitara of Solomon Islands.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Credentials Committee, I have the honor to introduce the report of the Credentials Committee concerning the credentials of the representatives to the 78th session of the General Assembly contained in document A/78/605. Mr. President, the committee had before it two communications, each concerning the representation of Myanmar and the representation of Afghanistan to the 78th session of the General Assembly. The committee decided to postpone its consideration of the credentials pertaining to the representatives of Myanmar and of Afghanistan to the 78th session of the General Assembly, and to revert to considerations of these credentials at a future time in the 78th session. Having considered the credentials of the representatives of other member states to the 78th session at its meeting on 6 December 2023, the Credentials Committee adopted without a vote a resolution accepting those credentials. Mr. President, the committee also recommended to the General Assembly the adoption of a draft resolution entitled, and I quote, Credentials of Representatives to the 78th session of the General Assembly, end of quote, which is contained in paragraph 14 of the report. I would like to note that since the day of the meeting of the Credentials Committee, formal credentials in the form required by Rule 27 of the Rules of Procedures were received regarding Suriname. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to members of the committee and to the Secretariat for facilitating our work. I thank you.
I thank the Chair of the Credentials Committee. I have been informed that no member state has requested to take the floor for the debate on this item. We shall now proceed to consider the draft resolution recommended by the Credentials Committee in its report. The General Assembly will now take a decision on the draft resolution entitled Credentials of Representatives to the 78th session of the General Assembly, recommended by the Credentials Committee in its report. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution? It is so decided. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, I'm taking floor for delivering explanation of position after adoption. We welcome the work of the committee and extend our gratitude to its chair for the submission of its report. My delegation has joined the consensus on the adoption of the resolution recommended by the Credential Committee. However, I would like to express my delegation's reservations about the part of the report and the resolution that could be construed as the recognition of the Israeli regime. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of sub-item B of Agenda Item 3. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 9, entitled Report of the Economic and Social Council, to take action on 2 draft resolutions contained in documents A/78/L27 and A/78/L29. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bhutan to introduce draft resolution A/78/L27.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I have the honor and privilege to introduce draft resolution A/78/L.27 entitled Graduation of Bhutan from the Least Developed Country category under Agenda Item 9 on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. This resolution is an expression of Bhutan's commitment to graduate from the category of the United Nations Least Developed Country on 13th December 2023 and takes note of the decision of the Royal Government of Bhutan to integrate its smooth transition strategy into its 13th National Development Plan. The resolution expresses concern over the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on Bhutan's socio-economic development and highlights its continued vulnerability to economic shocks, climate change, and disasters. The resolution emphasizes the importance of a sustainable and irreversible transition and invites the international community, including bilateral, regional, and multilateral partners, to support Bhutan's national development plans through extension of aid measures, especially in trade, in line with the Doha Program of Action for the LDCs. The resolution further calls for support in areas such as strengthening macroeconomic stability, economic diversification, environmental conservation, innovative financing, and readiness for future pandemics and disasters in Bhutan. Mr. President, given the significance of this occasion for my country, allow me, in my national capacity, to make the following remarks. The adoption of this resolution today will be a milestone for Bhutan, a momentous occasion as we stand on the threshold of a significant transition. It has been 53 years since Bhutan was inducted into the least developed country category in 1971. Since then, Bhutan has traversed an extraordinary path of socio-economic development led by our visionary monarchs, and today we are proud and stand ready to graduate. This achievement would not have been possible without the unwavering support and solidarity from our development partners and donors, both bilateral and multilateral. Your steadfast commitment has been crucial in shaping our growth from a mere 174 million Niltram budget outlay for our first 5-year plan in the early 1960s to a robust 512 billion Niltram for the ambitious 13th 5-year plan spanning from 2023 to 2028. This staggering growth stands as a testament to the collective efforts and dedication invested in Bhutan's progress. We express our gratitude to India, Japan, the European Union, the UN system, and all our partners for their steadfast support throughout our journey, which has greatly aided Bhutan in the pursuit of gross national happiness, our development goal. In our view, the graduation should not just be a triumph for Bhutan, but should symbolize the collective spirit and determination of nations striving for advancement. It stands as a beacon of hope, demonstrating that when united in purpose, incredible strides can be made despite global challenges. As we step into this new phase, we look forward to renewed and innovative forms of support and collaboration with all our partners towards fulfilling our national aspirations and contributing towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. In closing, I would like to thank all delegations for their active engagement, flexibility, and contribution to the strengthening the resolution and achieving consensus. I would like to thank Cuba, the chair of G77 in China, and members of this group for their support and solidarity. It would be remiss of me not to express our appreciation to the delegation of Nepal for facilitating this resolution and to the Secretariat of the UN OHRLLS, the DGACM, and OPGA for their assistance and support. Finally, our sincere gratitude to all delegations who have co-sponsored this resolution and for joining us in celebrating our collective achievement. Tashi Delek, and thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Bhutan. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Angola to introduce draft resolution A/78/L29.
Your Excellency Denis Francis, President of the General Assembly, distinguished colleagues, I have the honor to introduce the draft resolution A/78/L29 about the deferral of the graduation of Angola from the least developed country category. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the G77 and China for its unconditional support and solidarity, and express my gratitude to Mrs. Pramita Adhikari from the Permanent Mission of Nepal for facilitating this process, as well as the Member States for their constructive engagement during the informal consultations. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the Republic of Angola was scheduled to graduate in February 2024, but unfortunately, it will no longer be able to reach this important milestone due to multiple shocks, namely the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, unstable oil prices in the international market, serious droughts, food price increase, and currency devaluation. The gross national income per capita fell below the graduation criteria. The ECOSOC resolution E/23/10 recommended the General Assembly defer Angola's graduation to a later date to enable the Committee for Development Policy to further consider the country's economic situation and its smooth transition strategy. In this connection, after the presentation of the Committee for Development Policy report, the Angolan government activated Article 284 of the Doha Programme of Action and engaged in consultations through the enhanced mechanism with the CDP of the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Following consultations, the government of Angola and the CDP agreed to withdraw the country from the graduation process, taking into account the current socio-economic challenges which have disrupted its development progress. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Angola reiterates its commitment to the graduation process from LDC status because it's an important step for the country's sustainable development strategy, which has adopted the National Development Programme 2023-2027 as a medium-term planning instrument to implement the long-term strategy Angola 2050. Both strategies are fully aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union Agenda 2063 and the Doha Programme of Action. Finally, I would like to request Member States to join consensus for the adoption of this important draft resolution for Angola. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Angola. We shall now proceed to consider draft resolutions A78L27 and A78/L29. For your information, the draft resolutions have closed for e-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Mr. President, I should like to address the additional co-sponsors of L27 concerning graduation of Bhutan. On L27, since the submission of the draft resolution and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the foreign countries have also become co-sponsors of A/78/L27. Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Estonia, Finland, Hungary, Israel, Italy, Japan, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Kingdom of the Netherlands, Poland, Russian Federation, Slovakia, Slovenia, Sweden, Turkey, Tuvalu, and Ukraine. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor the draft resolution, please signify by pressing the microphone button now. States members of the United Nations that are members of G77 and China do not have to press the button because they are already co-sponsors. I see Montenegro, Canada, Albania, North Macedonia, if the delegation of Canada kindly turn off the microphone button unless there is any further change. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. Delegations wishing to make a statement in the explanation of vote before the vote on any proposal under this item are invited to do so now in one intervention. After action on all of them, there will be an opportunity for explanations of vote after the vote on any or all of them. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L27 entitled Graduation of Bhutan from the Least Developed Country category. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution A/78/L27? It is so decided. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L29 entitled Deferral of the Graduation of Angola from the Least Developed Country category to a later date. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/78/L29? It is so decided. The Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 9. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 13, entitled Integrated and Coordinated Implementation of and Follow-up to the Outcomes of the Major United Nations Conferences and Summits in the Economic, Social, and Related Fields, to take action on a draft resolution issued as document A/78/L28. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kazakhstan to introduce draft resolution A/78/L28.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to introduce on behalf of the core group members, namely Armenia, Bolivia, Germany, Kazakhstan, Kenya, and Kiribati, as well as other co-sponsors, the draft resolution entitled International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development 2026, contained in document A/78/L28. The draft resolution before the General Assembly seeks to designate 2026 as the International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development. The International Year of Volunteers in 2001 and its 10th anniversary in 2011 significantly contributed to making volunteerism an important component of national and regional development strategies. Since then, volunteerism has evolved into a natural component of the joint international efforts to adhere to rapid changes in our societies and economies, with more people volunteering in innovative ways than ever before. The International Year gives Member States a renewed opportunity to raise consciousness of volunteerism of the 25th anniversary of the United Nations' first International Year devoted to volunteers, to increase their role, involvement and capacity, and to strengthen the connection between volunteering and the SDGs. If proclaimed, the International Year will unite all relevant stakeholders in a year-long effort to integrate volunteering into the development agenda more effectively. Furthermore, it will have positive effect after 2026, addressing contemporary and emerging challenges in accelerating and attaining progress toward 2030 agenda. It will also address contemporary and emerging challenges that new models of volunteering are facing. Apart from that, the International Year will contribute to accelerating attaining progress towards the 2030 agenda and beyond. The resolution is prepared in accordance with the guidelines for the proclamation of international years adopted by the UN General Assembly Decision 35/424 upon proposal by the ECOSOC Resolution 1980/67. The document reaffirms relevant UN documents that recognize volunteers as an important tool for advancing sustainable development and contains references to the relevant UN resolutions on volunteerism. It also provides some recommendations on how governments, UN system and other stakeholders could support the implementation of the year. The UN volunteers will be designated as the focal point to lead and will coordinate all activities of the International Year. The concept of note for the draft reflected initial ideas on key objectives and priorities of the year. As per established practice, specific objectives of the International Year and the program of activities will be defined through an advisory committee comprised of member states and the UN entities. The draft resolution was agreed in its entirety during the informal consultations held in a very constructive spirit. We therefore look forward to its adoption by consensus. Let me express our sincere gratitude to all delegations for their productive engagement and constructive input they brought to the drafting process. We thank all the co-sponsors and invite all members who haven't not already done so to join the co-sponsorship list of the resolution. I would also want to extend our sincere gratitude to the UN volunteers and the UN Secretariat for their support throughout the process. Finally, our special words of gratitude goes to the experts in our missions for their work on facilitating the draft. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kazakhstan. We shall now proceed to consider draft resolution A/78/L28. For your information, the draft resolution has closed for e-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Mr. President, I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft resolution and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, The foreign countries have also become co-sponsors of A/78/L28. Algeria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Cabo Verde, Croatia, Cyprus, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, France, Georgia, Guatemala, Honduras, Hungary, Italy, Jordan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Morocco, Kingdom of the Netherlands, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Republic of Moldova, Russian Federation, Serbia, Singapore, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Tajikistan, Thailand, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Uzbekistan. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L28, please signify by pressing the microphone button. I see Iraq, Rwanda, Montenegro, Burkina Faso, Tunisia, Burundi, North Macedonia, if the microphone button can be turned off by these delegations. Iraq, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. The General Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L28 entitled International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development 2026. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/78/L28? It is so decided. The Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 13. The General Assembly will continue its consideration of Agenda Item 13 entitled Integrated and Coordinated Implementation of and Follow-up to the Outcomes of the Major UN Conferences and Summits in the Economic, Social and Related Fields, and resume its consideration of Sub-Item A of Agenda Item 75, entitled Oceans and the Law of the Sea, to take action on draft resolution issued as document A/78/L25. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of France to introduce draft resolution A/78/L25.
Monsieur le Président.
President of the General Assembly, ambassadors, dear colleagues. France and Costa Rica are delighted to present for adoption today by the General Assembly the resolution on the modalities for the third United Nations Oceans Conference. This resolution represents our roadmap by setting a horizon, June 2025, and a framework to together begin the preparations for this conference. I thank all delegations for their constructive commitment throughout the process. Your contributions led to a final result that we can all be happier with. The consensus that we forged during negotiations shows that the protection of the ocean and, more generally speaking, the defense of global common goods is a unifying theme. It's the proof that we can all come together to define a cooperation framework on a subject of shared interest that is vital for our existence under the aegis of the United Nations. The ocean is suffering too many cumulative pressures. It's affected by increasingly extreme temperatures and climate phenomena, a decline in its biodiversity, and an increase in the population. It's urgent to come together and to act together for the health of the oceans. In response to this urgent need, Costa Rica and France wanted to raise the level of ambition for UNOC 3. And in this spirit, we are proposing this draft resolution today. It builds on and is fully in line with the first conference co-chaired by Sweden and Fiji and the second edition co-chaired by Kenya and Portugal. This United Nations conference will be held in Nice. It will bring together the whole of the international community to fully implement SDG 14. We were hoping and wanted to make our discussions operational and action-oriented. There will be 10 ocean action panels in parallel to the plenary meetings, allowing states and all stakeholders to form engagement groups around specific outcomes. The modalities resolution for UNOC 3 defines the parameters for these new panels, which will be an essential instrument to ensure that we can achieve our common goals. Much remains to be done, particularly to define together the themes that we'll be discussing throughout the conference. We will be framing within the consultation process in the forthcoming months as transparently and inclusively as possible. France and Costa Rica will also be proposing 3 special events on the margins of the conference relating to science, on blue finance, and on sea level rise. UNOC 3, the general aim, the theme of which is speeding up action and mobilizing all stakeholders, aims to bring together all multilateral processes relating to the ocean. We're convinced that it will allow for great progress to be made for the protection and resilience of the oceans. The adoption of the resolution today is just one first stage. We need to step up collective efforts between now and June 2025 to make headway in environmental multilateralism related to the oceans and to ensure that vital announcements can be made in Nice. We also therefore call for the highest level of ambition to ensure that the Nice for the Oceans Plan of Action, which will be the outcome document bringing together the political declaration negotiated by states and voluntary commitments from all participants to ensure that they are commensurate with the level of emergencies being faced by the ocean. We're counting on you and the commitment of your country at the highest level, but also on civil society, because we know that UNOC will be a collective and joint project. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of France. We shall now proceed to consider draft resolution A/78/L25. In this connection, since draft resolution A/78/L25 has only been circulated today, it would be necessary to waive the relevant provision of Rule 78 of the Rules of Procedure, which reads as follows. As a general rule, no proposal shall be discussed or put to the vote at any meeting of the General Assembly unless copies of it have been circulated to all delegations no later than the day preceding the meeting. Unless I hear any objections, I shall take it that the Assembly agrees with my proposal to waive Rule 78. It is so decided. For your information, the draft resolution has closed for e-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Mr. President, I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft resolution, and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the foreign countries have also become co-sponsors of L25. Albania, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Chile, Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Fiji, Finland, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Honduras, Hungary, Iceland, Indonesia, Ireland, Japan, Kenya, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Maldives, Malta, Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Monaco, Morocco, Kingdom of the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Samoa, Saudi Arabia, Seychelles, Singapore, Slovakia, Slovenia, Solomon Islands, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine and Zambia. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L25, please signify by pressing the microphone button. I see Kiribati, Vanuatu, Montenegro, Mozambique, Tunisia, North Macedonia, Cape Verde, no more. If the delegation of Mozambique kindly turn off the microphone button unless there is any further change. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. The Assembly will now take action on draft resolution A/78/L25 entitled 2025 United Nations Conference to support the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt draft resolution A/78/L25? It is so decided. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I now give the floor to Australia on behalf of Cairns.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make this statement on behalf of Canada, New Zealand, and my own country, Australia. At the outset, Cairns would like to express our deep appreciation to France and Costa Rica for their efforts co-facilitating this resolution. We look forward to continuing this close collaboration as we participate in the preparatory meetings and negotiations and at the 2025 UN Oceans Conference in Nice. We are pleased to have joined consensus today in adopting the modalities for this process. Cairns would like to reaffirm our commitment to inclusive and transparent approaches to civil society participation at United Nations meetings, as well as stakeholder engagement more broadly. In this regard, we would like to register our strong disappointment that the language in paragraph 16 of Annex 2 does not contain the necessary provisions to ensure the meaningful participation of civil society at the 3rd UN Oceans Conference. We note that language safeguarding broad participation, transparency and accountability for CSO participation has recently been agreed by consensus. That language has not been replicated here. In our view, all Member States should be focused on ensuring that the General Assembly holds the final decision-making power on CSO participation at UN meetings. Cairns regrets that this will not be the case for the 3rd UN Oceans Conference, and we urge the membership to support the consensus modalities that protect CSO inclusion in future negotiated texts. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Australia for his statement. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 13 and Sub-Item A of Agenda Item 75. Okay. Okay. As it happens, we had not heard the last speaker in explanation of vote, and I so now invite the delegation of the United Kingdom to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to thank the co-facilitators, Costa Rica and France, for their leadership on the ocean agenda and their work on this resolution. The world's ocean is in crisis, teetering on a critical tipping point. The upcoming UN Ocean Conference in 2025 presents a crucial opportunity to accelerate progress towards achieving SDG 14 and other linked SDGs. Our climate, food security, and livelihoods depend on healthy oceans. We have had an historic year for biodiversity in oceans with the Global Biodiversity Framework and BB&J Agreement. It is imperative that we act now to implement these. The United Kingdom reaffirms our commitment to protecting our ocean from unsustainable activities and protecting its unique ecosystems. We welcome and join consensus on the UN Oceans Modalities Resolution. However, we would like to highlight a concern that paragraph 16 under Annex 2, as currently tabled, risks member states blocking the meaningful participation of civil society organizations, or CSOs, in the conference. Decisions about intergovernmental UN meetings should reside with the entire General Assembly, and we should not repeat mistakes of the past where individual member states have unilaterally and arbitrarily blocked the participation of CSOs. Denying the voices of legitimate partners with invaluable first-hand experience of the challenges affecting oceans and innovative solutions to solve them would be a grave error. We must hear from local communities, indigenous groups, fisherfolk, and experts whose knowledge can significantly inform our decisions and ensure the conference leads to more sustainable and equitable outcomes. To ensure all relevant voices are heard on this critical topic, let us work together to strengthen civil society participation, upholding the spirit of inclusivity that defines this institution. Thank you.
We have now heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 13 and Sub-Item A of Agenda Item 75. The General Assembly will now consider Agenda Item 14, entitled Culture of Peace, to take action on a draft resolution issued as document A/78/L26. Before we proceed to take action on this draft resolution, I should like to inform members that the Assembly will hold a debate on this item at a later date to be announced. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Pakistan to introduce draft resolution A/78/L26.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Republic of the Philippines and my own delegation, Pakistan, as well as all other co-sponsors, I have the privilege to introduce the draft resolution entitled Promotion of Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, Understanding and Cooperation for Peace, under Agenda Item 14, Culture of Peace. Mr. President, the primary purpose of the United Nations is the promotion and maintenance of international peace and security. The UN Charter provides several mechanisms, especially under Chapters 6 and 7, to promote this central purpose of the organization. As outlined in Article 3 of the UN Declaration on the Culture of Peace, the realization of such a culture is integrally linked to the central purposes of the UN Charter: pacific settlement of disputes, elimination of racial or religious discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and full recognition of the right to self-determination. Yet, to secure universal peace among and within nations, it is essential to promote a culture of peace, a culture which respects, accepts, and accommodates in policy and practice the diverse ethnicities, religions, and cultures which compose the mosaic of the modern states and our globalized international community. Mr. President, unfortunately, the challenges to the promotion of a culture of peace have grown in recent times. We are living through wars in Europe and the Middle East that have caused massive human suffering and physical destruction. We are witnessing the rise of hate based on religion, culture, and ethnic differences, resulting in acts of individual and collective violence. We are seeing the re-emergence of fascist and extremist ideologies even in mature democracies, including the phenomena of Islamophobia and other religious intolerance. States are resorting once again to the logic of power to impose their will on weaker nations. The Charter's norms of self-determination and non-use of force are being brazenly trampled. Meanwhile, terrorism has spread across the continents, destabilizing nations and regions. Yet it is precisely in such circumstances that the international community must mobilize the endeavors to promote a culture of peace. Pakistan and the Philippines have fostered this endeavor through their biennial resolution on a culture of peace. This year, the co-sponsors have made a conscious effort by carefully streamlining the text of the resolution to ensure that it focuses on its core purposes, which are: 1, to promote interreligious and intercultural dialogue to achieve peace and stability, and 2, to strengthen mechanisms that promise constructive dialogue across the most divergent divides. Mr. President, as conflicts and violence intensify, the beauty of religious, ethnic, and cultural diversity is overshadowed by hate and intolerance. Diversity is being weaponized as a catalyst for discord rather than for mutual enrichment. It amplifies the mistaken notion of a clash of civilizations, further fueling and perpetuating hate, discrimination, and organized violence against individuals, communities, and nations of different cultures, nationalities, religions, or race. Anti-Muslim discrimination and Islamophobic attitudes in particular have been misused to instigate discrimination and violence against Muslims. In this regard, the draft resolution recalls General Assembly resolution adopted year before last by consensus to observe 15 March as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, and it also welcomes the commemoration of this day earlier this year in this General Assembly hall. The resolution also reaffirms that violence can and should never be justifiable or acceptable response to acts of intolerance on the basis of religion or belief, and that such violence should not be attributed to any religion, nationality, civilization, or ethnic group. Mr. President, we are grateful for the constructive engagement of all delegations and groups and the flexibility they have demonstrated to help in restoring the traditional consensus enjoyed by this important resolution. The text of the resolution has passed the silence procedure. The co-sponsors hope and expect that it will be adopted by consensus. This will reinforce the enduring pledge undertaken by all member states to foster a culture of peace, a commitment that is critical in our current circumstances to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. I thank you, Mr. President.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Pakistan for his statement. We shall now proceed to consider draft resolution A/78/L26. For your information, the draft resolution has closed for e-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Mr. President, I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft resolution, and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the foreign countries have also become co-sponsors of L26. Algeria, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Plurinational State of Bolivia, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, China, Egypt, Guatemala, Honduras, Indonesia, Jordan, Kyrgyzstan, Lao People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, Morocco, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Panama, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Singapore, South Africa, Thailand, Turkey, Turkmenistan, United Arab Emirates, Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and Vietnam. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L26, please signify by pressing the microphone button now. I see Rwanda, Kiribati, Tunisia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Chad, Burkina Faso, Djibouti, Cameroon, if the microphone buttons can be turned off by Kiribati, unless there is any further change. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L26 entitled Promotion of Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, Understanding and Cooperation for Peace. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution A/78/L26? It is so decided. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I now give the floor to the delegation of the United States.
The United States firmly supports efforts to promote interreligious and intercultural dialogue and cooperation. We thank the Philippines and Pakistan for their initiative in tabling this text on an important topic of key interest to all UN delegations. We would like to take this opportunity to clarify our position on the following issues. The United States strongly supports the freedoms of expression and religion or belief. We oppose any attempts to unduly limit the exercise of these fundamental freedoms. In that context, we continue to have strong reservations about OP 15, where the text suggests that protections of freedom of expression and religion or belief are at odds with one another. We strongly believe that protecting both freedom of religion and freedom of expression promote mutual respect and pluralism, and that both of these rights are essential to human dignity and a robust civil society. We firmly believe that all people should be free to choose and practice their chosen faith or none at all. Freedom of religion plays an important societal role and is crucial to the creation of tolerant and respectful societies. These two freedoms are mutually reinforcing, and both must be respected in order to achieve mutual respect and meaningful interreligious and intercultural dialogue. The United States firmly believes that the best way to deal with intolerance or hate speech is not to restrict expression, but to promote dialogue. We advocate for robust protections for speech, as well as the enforcement of appropriate legal regimes that deal with discriminatory acts and hate crimes. We remind member states that, as recognized in the Istanbul process, the open, constructive, and respectful debate of ideas, as well as interfaith and intercultural dialogue at the local, national, and international levels play a positive role in combating religious hatred and violence. The United States strongly believes that in working together to build a more secure and peaceful world through the promotion of justice, democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. With respect to PP 24 and OP 15, the United States notes its reservations to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Nevertheless, we reiterate our appreciation for the efforts of the Philippines and Pakistan in tabling this resolution on interreligious dialogue. The United States remains committed to working with the member states to promote tolerance and understanding. Thank you.
I thank the delegation of the United States, and I now invite the delegation of the Russian Federation to take the floor.
Господин председатель.
President, we thank the delegation of Pakistan and the Philippines for preparing the draft resolution on an important issue, the encouraging of interreligious, intercultural dialogue, mutual understanding, and cooperation for peace. The Russian Federation is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious state. As such, we give prominence to the development of intercultural and interreligious dialogue. We do so both at the national and at the international levels. We fully share the opinion that the promotion of a culture of peace and mutual respect are the key to tackling many contemporary challenges. We are convinced that genuine progress toward achieving a culture of peace is possible only when considering the entire range of issues that would stand in the way of this problem. An objective assessment and an immediate response is needed by the international community, specifically with regard to the instances of churches being used as tools to promote political doctrines, especially doctrines that are xenophobic and misanthropic in nature. In this regard, the international community should not look idly by as legislative initiatives are introduced aiming to ban traditional religious confessions, and should not stand idly by at the seizure of the property of religious communities, including the buildings of churches and monasteries, and they should not stand idly by at the intervention of governments into church affairs, specifically by forcing religious communities to change their religious jurisdictions. These actions violate Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and social rights. This article should have been reflected in this General Assembly resolution. Everything that I've mentioned above is not the fruit of some theoretical imagination, but rather a reality of contemporary Ukraine, where on the 19th of October 2023, the Parliament adopted in the first reading a draft bill number 8371, entitled On the Amendment of Several Laws of Ukraine on the Activities in Ukraine of Religious Organizations. The only aim of this draft bill is to fully ban the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. If the bill is adopted, and the authorities in Ukraine are trying to expedite that procedure, already in early this year, They're trying to do this. If this bill is adopted, then early next year on the territory of this state, an ancient church with millions of parishioners could be destroyed. To replace this church, the Ukrainian authorities are attempting to create some sort of a schismatic structure which has almost the same name. The clergy and worshippers are going to be forced to move into this new jurisdiction through deceit, violence, and blackmail. The property of the church is going to be forcibly confiscated, including by the state, and that property will be transferred to a new structure. The most flagrant, but by far not the only example of this, is the seizure of the Kievo-Pechersk monastery, which is a symbol of canonical orthodoxy. In early December, there was a seizure of another monastery in Cherkasovsk, the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Cherkasy. Anybody who wants to learn more about this topic and see the truth is recommended to simply take a look on the internet. There you can clearly see videos on the internet. There you can see how Ukrainian soldiers beat parishioners and clerics, shouting insults at them, including they did so while seizing this aforementioned monastery, the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I want to point out to all delegations here in the hall Ukraine's contravention of its obligations under Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which enshrines the right to everyone to the freedom of thought, conscience, and religious, and which bans the coercion to choose any particular religion. We call upon the international communities and in all states and on all religions to put pressure on Kiev and to lead it not to adopt this criminal law, and also to motivate the Ukrainian authorities to stop persecuting the clergy and the worshippers of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. I thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Spain.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, President. I have the honour to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states to explain our position on the draft resolution contained in document L26. The European Union is a strong supporter of freedom of religion or belief and actively encourages and supports interreligious and intercultural dialogue, understanding and cooperation for peace. We welcome the efforts of the co-facilitators Pakistan and the Philippines this year to streamline the text and update the resolution. However, we regret that the resolution in many ways duplicates the provisions of two other resolutions recently adopted by the Third Committee and soon to be considered by the General Assembly. The first is on freedom of religion and belief. The other on combating intolerance, negative stereotyping, stigmatization of and discrimination, incitement to violence, and violence against persons based on religion or belief. The European Union welcomed the co-facilitators' approach to focus this time on streamlining, and we refrained from putting forward substantive proposals. With cooperation from others, the result is indeed a better and more readable text. We intend to continue cooperating constructively on this resolution in its future iterations with the objectives of enhancing references to the full enjoyment of human rights and of safeguarding references to the rights of freedom of expression and opinion and to the freedom of thought, conscience and religion or belief against attempts to curtail or redefine them. We also stress that the United Nations should be impartial and avoid singling out any particular confession and concentrate on a more universal approach. In this sense, we reiterate our position on the term Islamophobia. By using such a term instead of anti-Muslim discrimination or anti-Muslim hatred, undue emphasis is placed on protecting religion as such, thereby undermining the principles of international human rights law, where the focus is on protecting individuals. Indeed, the right to freedom of religion or belief, which includes the right not to believe or to change one's religion, follows the same principle of all other human rights, where the state is the duty bearer and individuals are rights holders. Everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right shall include freedom to have or to adopt a religion or belief of his choice, and freedom, either individually or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. As the main sponsor of the annual resolutions on freedom of religion or belief in New York and Geneva, the European Union advocates a comprehensive and universal approach which seeks to eliminate all forms of incitement to discrimination, hostility, violence, and intolerance directed against persons because of their religion or belief, including non-believers. Therefore, while we thank the co-facilitators for their efforts, we still believe that the balance of the text can be further improved in the future. With these clarifications, the EU and its member states have joined consensus today. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Spain for his statement. The exercise of the right of reply has been requested. May I remind members that statements in the exercise of the right of reply are limited to 10 minutes for the first intervention and to 5 minutes for the second intervention, and should be made by delegations from their seats. I call on the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are disappointed to see a Russian delegation once again turn in the consideration of this important issue into a platform for their lies and propaganda. Russia was doing the same during informal consultations, and we appreciate that the delegations rejected such approach. And also that the Russian Federation found itself is isolated in their attempts. Thank you.
The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 14. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 125, entitled Global Health and Foreign Policy, to take action on 2 draft resolutions contained in documents A/78/L14 and A/78/L24, and 2 draft amendments contained in documents A/78/L31 and A/78/L32. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Philippines to introduce draft resolution A/78/L14.
So an update for people that's just joining the stream tonight. The resolution has been accepted and will be voted on tomorrow. Around about 9 o'clock UK time, we're still bringing full coverage. You can see the overhead camera of the border between Israel and Gaza from Stay Row, which is live, and then in the top right-hand corner, the live United Nations Security Council meeting that is underway, and that's been ongoing for the past hour or so.
Hygiene, waste and electricity services in healthcare facilities. In 2019, member states committed through a World Health Assembly resolution to meet the target of universal access to water, sanitation, waste management, and hygiene services in healthcare facilities by 2030. Although some progress has been made since that resolution, many critical gaps remain. It is deeply concerning that 1 in 5 healthcare facilities lack basic water. 1 in 5 has no sanitation. 1 in 2 lacks basic hand hygiene. 1 in 4 does not segregate healthcare waste. And furthermore, 1 billion people access healthcare facilities without reliable electricity or without electricity access at all. The situation is most dire in the least developed countries,
where,
for
feedback.
example, only 21% of healthcare facilities have basic sanitation services, whereas the target for 2025 is 80%. Fully functioning wash, waste, and electricity services are a crucial aspect of preventing infections, reducing antimicrobial resistance, ending preventable maternal and newborn deaths, and responding to outbreaks and emergencies. The political declarations of the recent health-related high-level meetings approved by our heads of state recognize the importance of water, sanitation, hygiene, waste management, and electricity services in healthcare facilities for health promotion, disease prevention, and the safety of both patients and health workers, and highlighted the need for urgent, universal, and equitable access to these services as a crucial aspect of pandemic prevention, preparedness and response, as well as functioning of health systems in general. It is crucial to translate this political endorsement into action on the ground. Considering population growth, climate change, and urbanization, ensuring these services in healthcare facilities is an integral part of delivering across the SDGs. The present resolution focuses on three main areas where action is urgently needed. First, integrate wash, waste, and electricity services into health planning, programming, financing, and monitoring at all levels. Second, regularly monitor and review progress and strengthen accountability. Third, develop and empower the health workforce to deliver and maintain wash, waste, and electricity services and practice good hygiene. With this resolution, it is our intent to ensure that the discussions on sustainable, safe, and universal wash, waste, and electricity services are integrated into other high-level relevant discussions here in the United Nations, particularly on universal health coverage, antimicrobial resistance, and interlinkages across the SDGs, among others. We would like to thank all member states for their constructive engagement throughout the process. We also wish to thank the WHO teams, both here in New York and in Geneva, for the Secretariat support they provided member states on this important issue. Excellencies and colleagues, from Geneva, we have brought this important issue here in New York to the attention of the General Assembly in response to a very clear and urgent need for stronger multilateral collaboration to strengthen and consolidate member state commitments, leadership, and investments. We thank those who have already co-sponsored the resolution and invite others to likewise register the support and co-sponsor the same to facilitate real and transformative impact on the ground. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States to introduce draft resolution A/78/L24.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to introduce the resolution entitled Enhanced Action at National, Regional, and International Levels to Address the Global Public Health and Security Challenges
This will be interesting to see, of course, what
the
United States are going to say on this.
The United States introduced this resolution
of course,
to highlight emerging global
States.
issues related to
This one
synthetic drugs and to urge widespread and unified support to address their associated public health and security challenges. We feel strongly that this resolution achieves what we set out to do. This resolution aligns with U.S. efforts to enhance international cooperation on this urgent issue through the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, Blinken in July 2023, and ongoing efforts in the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs. The resolution relies heavily on agreed language from the Commission on Narcotic Drugs in recognition that the CND is the policy-making body of the UN system with prime responsibility for drug-related matters. It is intended to be public health and security of all countries. The text presents a balanced approach encompassing public health, human rights, and security perspectives. We feel strongly that this resolution should not get ahead of the work done in Vienna and the Third Committee. We urge you to keep this in mind today as we consider the adoption of the text, including the amendments that have been presented since tabling. This resolution sets the stage for strengthened cooperation that can help us save lives, protect our citizens, and weaken transnational criminal organizations. I urge all countries in this room to support the text. Your support sends a message of global unity and commitment to addressing and countering the public health and safety threats posed by synthetic drugs as part of a comprehensive, integrated, and balanced approach to addressing and countering all aspects of the world drug problem. A vote in favor of this resolution has the potential to have real impact. To conclude, let me reiterate, this resolution sets a that can help us save lives, protect the health of our citizens, and weaken transnational criminal organizations. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico to introduce draft amendments A/78/L31 and A/78L32.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, President. We're grateful for the efforts of the United States to raise the profile of global challenges posed by synthetic drugs.
Short and sweet by the United
States. For the government of Mexico, for my country, addressing these challenges represents a priority. For Mexico, it's crucial to protect health, the well-being, and the security of everyone.
I think we definitely expected a little bit more from the United States. That was quite surprising. Definitely quite surprising.
President, our delegation participated actively in negotiations for this draft resolution L24 with the firmly held belief that we were contributing to a pioneering document that would contemplate all of the dimensions of this issue under a comprehensive, integrated and balanced approach. In this context, we are concerned to note that the draft resolution L24 in its current version doesn't make any reference to the only resolution of this General Assembly on the world drugs problem, particularly entitled Addressing and Countering the World Drugs Problem Through a Comprehensive, Integrated and Balanced Approach. Resolution A/77/238 underscores the importance of holistically addressing a phenomenon that affects all countries through the formulation of more humane and effective drugs policies commensurate with the challenges that we are facing that are increasingly complex, such as those posed by synthetic drugs. For my country, the omission of Resolution 77/238 is not acceptable. This is the most recent GA resolution on this matter. Maintaining this reference is conserving the vision of the majority of the membership on the need for a balanced and integral approach in the formulation and implementation of policies in drugs that would incorporate a public health and human rights-based approach. To address this concern,
I think everyone fully expects tomorrow for the resolution to get voted through.
To Resolution 77/238 in preambular paragraph 8 of draft resolution L24. Mexico is convinced that the reference to Resolution 77/238 contributes to the formulation of drugs policies with a broad-based, integrated, multidisciplinary and balanced approach, which is essential in order national drugs policies. For these reasons, we respectfully ask all delegations to support this amendment. Supporting it also means recognizing the importance of maintaining continuity in our work and recognizing the resolutions adopted by this General Assembly.
Be put to a vote. We respectfully call on all delegations to support this amendment and vote yes. Señor Presidente, ahora...
President, I'll now move on to presenting the second amendment, L.32. Since the beginning of the negotiations of the draft resolution L.24, Mexico, with the support of other delegations, called for the incorporation of language that would accurately reflect the full chain of the drugs problem, from production and trafficking to distribution in illicit consumption and use markets. We regret that having not heard reservations from other delegations, our proposal to include a reference to the distribution of drugs in consumer market wasn't included in the final text. The resolution in its current status doesn't appropriately reflect the full chain of the world's drugs problem. It doesn't recognize the full spectrum of the problem. It's fundamental to recognize and address all aspects and facets of this issue, because without a balanced approach that would contemplate demand and distribution in consumption markets, efforts to address and counter the world drugs problem will be incomplete and ultimately ineffective. Without a complete approach, we will be unable to formulate effective drugs policies that place people at the heart. For all of these reasons, President, Mexico proposed an amendment to incorporate in preambular paragraph 1 the specific reference to the distribution in illicit consumer markets. It's crucial to recognize that the world's drugs problem goes beyond the borders of producing and trafficking countries. A major issue is vast networks of distribution that set the final consumer price and generate enormous interest for the illicit economy. This income fosters the global production and trafficking of drugs to their final destination. This is a critical challenge that must be addressed with the same seriousness and commitment that is applied to production and transit. Given the transnational nature of the problem, it's imperative to have a cooperation-based approach that is coordinated among all countries in order to address both supply and demand in these markets. In this context, Mexico requests the support of all delegations for the proposed amendment. We believe that this significantly would strengthen the scope and the substance of draft resolution L24.
Of the amendments L.31 or L.32, or both of them, be put to a vote, we respectfully call on all delegations to support these amendments and to vote yes. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Muchas gracias.
We shall now proceed to consider draft resolution A/78/L14 and A/78/L24 and the draft amendments A/78/L31 and A/78/L32. For your information, the draft resolutions and the draft amendments have closed for e-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Mr. President, I should like to address the additional co-sponsorship of all 4 L documents under this agenda item. First, on L14. I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft resolution, and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the foreign countries have also become co-sponsors of L14. Austria, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Brazil, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Croatia, Cyprus, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, France, Georgia, Honduras, Indonesia, Ireland, Israel, Malaysia, Malta, Morocco, Peru, Portugal, Republic of Moldova, Singapore, South Africa, Spain, Suriname, Thailand, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L14, please signify by pressing the microphone button now. I see Chad, Kiribati, although Kiribati is already on the L document, Nigeria, Jordan, Ghana, Montenegro, Senegal, Tajikistan. North Macedonia. If the microphone button can be turned off by delegation of Senegal, unless there is any further change to the co-sponsorship. Next, L24. Since the submission of the draft resolution, and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the following countries have also become co-sponsors of L24. Afghanistan, Austria, Cyprus, Israel, Kazakhstan, Morocco, Philippines, Poland, Republic of Korea, Thailand, and Turkey. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L24, please signify by pressing the microphone button. I see Nigeria, Dominican Republic, no more. Next, L31. I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft amendment and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the following countries have also become co-sponsors of L31. Bulgaria, Canada, Colombia, Czechia, Estonia, Greece, Honduras, Latvia, Luxembourg, Malta, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Ukraine. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L31, please signify by pressing the microphone button. I see Lithuania, Montenegro, if Lithuania can turn off the microphone button. Thank you. Finally, on L32, since the submission of the draft amendment and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the following countries have also become co-sponsors of L32. Colombia and Honduras. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor L32, please signify by pressing the microphone button. I see none. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. Delegations wishing to make a statement in the explanation of vote before the vote on any proposal under this item are invited to do so now in one intervention. After action on all of them, there will be an opportunity for explanations of vote after the vote on any and all of them. Delegations wishing to make a statement in explanation of vote before the vote on any or all of the draft resolutions are invited to do so now in one intervention. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote before the vote May I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegation of the United States.
Thank you. I will group all interventions on these various amendments and resolutions together and highlight by title. With regards to L31, which is the proposed amendment to PP8 on the resolution that is L24, the issue of whether and how to include a reference to the UN General Assembly Resolution 77/238 was extensively discussed during the informal consultations, and we were unable to identify language which could achieve consensus other than the general reference that is already in the text. We recognize that Resolution 77/238 is very important to many delegations, and the United States was among the countries voting in favor of the text last year, as well as co-sponsoring. However, we left it out of the table draft of this resolution because it was clear that its inclusion would not enjoy consensus. The United States will abstain from voting on this amendment. Turning to L32, which is an amendment to PP1 on Resolution L24. The amendment to add illicit retail markets takes this text in a direction we as the co-sponsor, have specifically tried to avoid. It introduces a new concept not recognized in the Vienna context, undermining our efforts to respect Vienna's leading role in international drug policy. Also, this is not a concept addressed in Third Committee resolutions on the world drug problem. Further, it is a legal contradiction. The term retail is used in the UN drug control treaties exclusively to refer to the legitimate distribution of drugs for medical and scientific purposes, in contrast to the term illicit markets, which refers to criminal distribution for non-medical and non-scientific purposes. The term illicit retail markets is therefore problematic. This underscores the importance of respecting Vienna's leading role. By taking this text beyond what the experts in Vienna have discussed, this amendment appears to introduce a fundamental legal error into the resolution. For that reason, the United States will oppose this amendment and urges other delegations to also vote no on Amendment L32. Turning to the full text, L24. During informals, it was clear that there is broad support for addressing this issue, and we believe that the vote today is based solely on language referencing a separate resolution, rather than on substantive disagreement over the current resolution itself. We therefore regard the substantive portions of this text as having successfully achieved consensus. We remain hopeful that the resolution is adopted by a wide margin in order to demonstrate widespread recognition that this is an important issue that we need to work together to address. A vote in favor of this text sends a message that your country stands with the United States and a majority of member states in committing to address the public health and safety threats posed by synthetic drugs. Turning now to L14. The United States is pleased to join consensus on the resolution, sustainable, safe, and universal water, sanitation, hygiene, waste, and electricity services in healthcare facilities. In reference to OP2, OP4, and OP6, the United States would like to reiterate that the Multilateral Development Banks, or MDBs, the International Monetary Fund, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development have their own governance structures, mandates, and decision-making processes that are independent of the UN and are essential to helping ensure that they remain fiscally solvent and able to support the objectives of their shareholders. Moreover, these institutions' governing bodies include broad country membership, including recipient and non-recipient members. As such, it is inappropriate and potentially undermines the intended function of these entities for the UN to speak to, directly influence, or to make specific recommendations regarding the MDBs, the OECD, and the IMF. In this regard, we reiterate the proper fora to discuss eligibility measures for concessional finance and official development assistance are the respective boards of the MDBs themselves and the OECD. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement And I now invite the distinguished representative of Japan to take the floor.
Honorable President Dennis Francis, and distinguished delegates and esteemed colleagues, today, as we stand on the threshold of adopting the WASH resolution, I'm honored to represent Japan. I would like to express our profound gratitude to our colleagues from the Philippines and Hungary, whose dedication as facilitators was instrumental in shaping this pivotal resolution. This resolution pivotal to ensuring sustainable, safe, and universal water, sanitation, hygiene, waste, and electricity services in healthcare facilities aligns seamlessly with our unwavering commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Japan, guided by our ethos of human security and inclusivity, strongly believes in the transformative power of universal health coverage and comprehensive healthcare. Our support for this resolution is a reflection of our deep-seated conviction that every individual deserves access to essential health services, irrespective of their circumstances. In this context, I wish to honor Dr. Tetsu Nakamura, who tragically lost his life in Afghanistan on December 4th, 2019, 4 years ago. His dedication to humanitarian work and his efforts in Afghanistan, particularly in building canal projects and transforming arid lands into fertile grounds, exemplified the spirit of this resolution. Dr. Nakamura's approach was holistic, addressing the root causes of poor health, such as malnutrition and unsanitary conditions. His work in constructing hospitals and promoting agricultural development was instrumental in creating sustainable communities and strengthening primary health care. As we remember Dr. Nakamura today, let us reaffirm our commitment to the principles he stood for: compassion, resilience, and a belief in a better world. His legacy inspires our efforts towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. In closing, I am proud to announce that Japan joins Hungary and the Philippines as a co-sponsor of this initiative. We are committed to accelerating our efforts to realize this resolution's vision and actively support capacity building in developing countries. Together, let me honor Dr. Nakamura's memory by working tirelessly towards a world where no one is left behind, where every individual has access to the highest attainable standard of health. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Japan, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
President, the Russian Federation regrets that the delegation of Mexico decided to insert an amendment into the draft resolution on enhancing action at national, regional, and international levels to address the global public health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs. If these amendments are adopted, they would strip this document and document on an important aspect of countering narcotics, strip this document of its consensus status. The Russian Federation is firmly convinced that only a strong consensus-based decision on combating narcotics can ensure the unity of the approaches of the international community when it comes to the development of an effective defense against drug crime. As of today, the last such document is and remains the Specialized Omnibus Resolution of 2021, namely Resolution 76/188. Precisely, this resolution reflects the results of many years of negotiations in the efforts to coordinate positions. And this is the precise result upon which the overwhelming majority of delegations worked, including Russia, during the negotiations on the resolution of the General Assembly up for consideration today. However, one delegation decided to introduce an amendment that undermined that unity. We think that this destructive behavior of this delegation is unacceptable, especially considering the status that they have as the coordinator of the counter-narcotics dossier in the Third Committee. That's quite lamentable. These actions have strayed from the chief task of the sponsors of this draft in terms of uniting the efforts of the entire international community to oppose transnational narcotics crime. Moreover, we see these amendments as a continuation of the push to undermine the unity against drugs, the groundwork for which was laid last year. At that time, the very same delegation coordinating the work on Resolution 77/238, which was supposed to be an updated anti-drug omnibus, that delegation led states into a deliberately non-consensus-based, unbalanced, and simply unacceptable text. As everyone knows, in the vote, this draft failed to garner support from practically a third of the states of the General Assembly. This result, incidentally, was quite natural. The coordinators at that time, for the very first time, failed to engage with established practice, and they didn't use as a basis the consensus text of a resolution of a General Assembly. Instead of doing so, the authors laid out their own new vision for the document, in which critical central matters on compliance with specialized anti-drug conventions and law enforcement cooperation were sidelined. The focus was shifted onto concepts that don't enjoy universal support among states. All of these new approaches did not pass through the crucible of the specialized Vienna fora. Of course, for our delegation and for many others, this approach was unacceptable, which ultimately led to a vote for the first time in many years of working based on consensus. This is the reason why we cannot agree to refer to this document, and we certainly can't further focus attention on it as is proposed in the amendment to PP8 of the resolution. Our position was repeatedly voiced at the consultations, and everyone is fully familiar with our position. Therefore, the authors of the amendment are deliberately breaking consensus, submitting as amendments to the final text elements that are clearly non-starters for other delegations. When it comes to this resolution under consideration, we have a chance to move past the unsuccessful experiment with Resolution 77/238, and we have the opportunity to try to return to what united us all. In this regard, we encourage everyone to vote against the amendment in PP8. As for the amendment in PP1, we are going to vote against that paragraph too. The ideas set out in this paragraph merit further discussion, and they cannot be adopted in the form in which they were tossed in at the 11th hour by the delegation of Mexico. Furthermore, this is a matter of principle. Because the negotiations process on the draft resolution was focused on consensus, the participants acted in accordance with that principle. In an attempt to seek compromise, many delegations, including Russia, set aside or rather refrained from reflecting in the text their own priorities. Considering the importance of tackling the global drugs issue and its specific aspects, including synthetic drugs, we see only one way forward, one way to work, namely through consensus, which enhances the status and the force of decisions thus taken, thereby reflecting the sole will of the international community. In that regard, we encourage all delegations to reject the amendments proposed for PP1. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation, and I now invite the distinguished delegate of Belarus.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, President. Rather, we would like to comment Mexico's amendment on L31 and on L32. The Republic of Belarus is going to vote against Mexico's proposed amendment. In terms of Amendment L31, which proposes inserting in preambular paragraph 8 a mention of non-consensus-based Resolution 77/238, I would like to note the following. The delegation of Mexico sent a note on the 12th of December 2023. That's note number 04799. That note was circulated to the member states. The note said that the failure to mention in the paragraph of its resolution 77/238 was, quote, an omission. In fact, that is an untruthful assertion. PP 8 mentions all resolutions of the General Assembly, which by default already includes resolution 77/238. Singling out some single resolution out of all of the documents on this issue, especially a resolution that was not adopted, that was not only adopted by a vote, but was seriously controversial among members of the organization. This resolution should not be emphasized more than others in this context. Furthermore, the text of the amendment singles out resolution 77/238 supposedly because it was supposedly the most recent one, and as the representative of Mexico said, it was the only one. I'd like to recall that the most recent doesn't mean the only one. It doesn't mean the full one. It doesn't mean important, and it doesn't mean best. Setting up a hierarchy of importance for resolutions based on when they were adopted is unacceptable in our view. Furthermore, we disagree with the approach chosen by the delegation of Mexico when it comes to L32 because of another reason. It amounts to a level of vanity and self-regard that has hitherto been unseen in this General Assembly. Let's just imagine. Let's say every negotiation came to negotiations with phrases like, if the text doesn't refer to our resolution, then we're going to put your resolution to a vote. What would happen? What would become of the negotiation process in that case? That's a rhetorical question. Clearly, the only basis for Mexico to submit this amendment is an attempt to legitimize the total fiasco that transpired with resolution 77/238 last year by referring to this document and the fact that there were serious problems and disagreements last year, and those disagreements and problems would spill over into a good text this year. Apparently Mexico's totally unconcerned with that. I'll turn now to Amendment L32, which inserts one phrase into PP1, the phrase illicit retail markets. I have the following to note here. This paragraph is based on the resolution of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, on resolution 66/2, and Belarus from the very beginning advocated for continuing verbatim the wording from that resolution. We ended up correcting the text. Unfortunately, the delegation of Mexico, in the above-mentioned note on the 12th of December 2023, once more are clearly attempting to deceive delegations in saying that the amendment is aiming to, quote, is aiming at a more comprehensive understanding of the entire range of drug problems, end quote. It's clear that that is far from being the case. The amendment proposed narrows the significance of the first preambular paragraph and distorts it. If you take a close look at the paragraph with the amendment, then you can draw the conclusion that some illegally produced and illegally circulated drugs could be legally sold on retail markets. We agree with the previous speakers that these concepts merit further discussion, require further discussion. We trust that the General Assembly should not generate terminology for the Commission on Narcotics Drugs, and PP1 should be fully in keeping with the resolution 66/2 of the CND and should maintain the broad scope. That is why Belarus is going to vote against Amendment L32. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished delegation of Belarus for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Egypt to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my delegation thanks the United States for presenting the resolution to address the global public health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs as a component of addressing and countering the world drug problem. While cognizant of the principal role of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs in this domain and the mandate given to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime related thereto, we support the resolution as tabled by the United States. On the amendment proposed in document L31 to insert a specific reference to GA Resolution 77/238, my delegation views that the existing PP8 is all-encompassing, and it represents a compromise that should have led to consensus on the resolution. However, the amendment constitutes an act of coercion exercised by a few delegations to bestow legitimacy on the only voted GA resolution on addressing and countering the world drug problem. This resolution does not constitute a basis for consensus and future action on the world drug problem, while Vienna remains the mainstay of consultations on this issue. The guiding GA resolution in this domain remains to be the latest omnibus resolution number 76/188. The amendment presented today comes despite the visible divisions and utter lack of consensus on including this reference in an issue-specific resolution. We thank the United States for respecting the views of member states during the informal consultations and refraining from including divisive language in order to preserve consensus. However, it appears that few member states are willing and do pursue the aim of breaking the consensus to enforce their views on the wider UN membership. Therefore, my delegation joins the call for a vote on the above-mentioned amendment and will vote against, and we appeal to delegations to vote likewise to preserve consensus on the resolution. On the amendment contained in document L32, to insert the phrase illicit retail markets in PP1, it is noteworthy to mention that this phrase has never been presented during the informal consultations, nor in the written submission of comments on the zero draft of the resolution under consideration. Accordingly, it has not been subject to discussions among member states. It is unfortunate that the amendment is not backed by a source of Vienna-based agreed language. The definition of types of markets where synthetic drugs are being distributed should be subject to a technical and legal discussion within the framework of mandated commissions, namely the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. Accordingly, my delegation will vote against the proposed amendment and appeals to other member states to vote likewise. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Egypt for his statement and now invite the distinguished delegate of Czechia.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President. With your indulgence, I would like to take us back to the resolution or draft resolution A/78/L14, which the Czech Republic meant to co-sponsor. And I would like, therefore, to kindly ask the Secretariat to please register our co-sponsorship of the resolution A/78/L14. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Czechia. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote before the vote. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L14 entitled Sustainable, Safe and Universal Water, Sanitation, Hygiene, Waste and Electricity Services in Healthcare Facilities. May I take it that it is the wish of the General Assembly to adopt the draft resolution A/78/L14? It is so decided. Before we proceed to take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L24, in accordance with Rule 90 of the Rules of Procedure, the Assembly shall first take a decision on draft amendments A/78/L31 and A/78/L32 one by one. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft amendment A/78/L31. A recorded vote has been requested. We shall begin the voting process now. Those in favor of draft amendment A/78/L31, please signify. Those against, and abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on draft amendment L31. L31. Will all delegations confirm that the votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows: 75 in favor, 27 against, with 36 abstentions. Draft amendment A/78/L31 is adopted. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft amendment A/78/L32. A recorded vote has been requested. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of draft amendment A/78/L32, please signify. Those against, and abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on draft amendment L32. Will all delegations confirm that the votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows: 19 in favor, 36 against, with 82 abstentions. The draft amendment A/78/L32 is not adopted. Since draft amendment A/78/L31 was adopted, we shall proceed to take action on draft resolution A/78/L24 as amended. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/78/L24 entitled Enhancing Action at National, Regional and International Levels to address the global public health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs, as amended. In accordance with a request, in the absence of a request for a recorded vote, may I take it that it is the wish of the General Assembly to adopt draft resolution A/78/L24 as amended? It is so decided. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegation of China.
Mr. President, drugs are a common hazard to human society, and the international community has the joint responsibility to control it. The resolution on synthetic drugs, just adopted by the General Assembly, confirms the international drug control mechanism based on 3 UN conventions. It is overall balanced in requiring for a reduction of both supply and demand, and made it clear that international cooperation is needed on synthetic drugs control based on the principle of joint responsibility. The resolution mentioned domestic laws and situations of countries multiple times, which shows respect for the judicial systems and national contexts of member states. It needs to be pointed out that the resolution can be further improved in terms of requiring for demand reduction and containing drug abuse. But in general, the resolution helps to improve the awareness of the international community on the harm of synthetic drugs and sends a clear signal about addressing the threat of synthetic drugs. Therefore, China joined the consensus on the draft resolution. Mr. President, the Chinese government has consistently adhered to a rigid drug control policy and zero-tolerance attitude towards drugs. We put people first and also have carried out large-scale campaigns against drugs. China has been committed to confronting drug issues within China and also deepening international cooperation on drug control. China takes seriously the harm brought by synthetic drugs to human society. As early as in 2019, China started listing all fentanyl-like substances as controlled substances and has taken a series of effective measures to crack down on the whole category. China was the first and by far the only country to do this. Thus, China has played a pivotal role in preventing illegal production, circulation, and abuse of such substances. The international community should come together to tackle the issue of synthetic drugs based on the principle of shared responsibility. Each country needs to start from its national context and take targeted measures to live up to its international obligation. For countries with abuse problems, the correct way is to face the issue directly and address the root cause by taking effective measures to reduce domestic demand instead of deflecting responsibility elsewhere. Otherwise, this problem cannot be solved fundamentally. China is willing to work with all parties to address the threat of synthetic drugs and further contribute to people's health and well-being. China is willing to make further contributions. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of China. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Qatar.
السيد الرئيس يسعدنا أن ندلي بهذا.
President, we are going to deliver this statement on behalf of Kuwait, the Sultanate of Oman, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, my country, and on behalf of Bahrain, to explain our position on this resolution, which is enhancing action at national, regional, and international levels to address the global public health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs. We hail the adoption of this draft resolution, and we thank the United States for its efforts to facilitate negotiations. We voted in favor of this draft resolution, which underscored important issues, notably the threat that these substances pose to security and public health, as well as the manufacturing and the trafficking of these drugs and their use for non-scientific purposes. This is a major problem at the international level. It is a threat which affects the entire world, hence the need for us to redouble our efforts to counter this phenomenon through cooperation with the UN and its agencies. President, we join the consensus. This is because efforts have been undertaken to achieve consensus during the informal negotiations. That is why our countries voted against an amendment, the amendment. That is because we need to mention the General Assembly resolution on drugs and on combating this scourge. This is why we disassociate ourselves from that amendment. Thank you, President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Qatar, and I'd now like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Switzerland.
Madame la Présidente.
President, Switzerland thanks the United States for having presented this important resolution aiming to enhance action to address the challenges of synthetic drugs. I have three salient points in my intervention. First, availability. Second, the importance of Resolution 77/238 of the General Assembly and of Resolution 52/24 of the Human Rights Council. The third point is the need to collaborate with various partners of the United Nations. Turning to availability, synthetic drugs call for innovative responses and coordinated actions among states. Switzerland will continue to share its national best practices, aiming to strike a balance between reducing the illegal use of synthetic drugs and ensure the availability for medical and scientific purposes. Switzerland is committed to ensuring the availability and access to these substances for legitimate needs, namely to ease pain, carry out anesthesia, and for mental health and for palliative care. We thus thank the authors of the resolution for having introduced these key factors to ensure the guarantee of the availability of these drugs as essential medications and to ease the prevention and the accessibility of treatments that are based on compelling evidence for people that are addicted. However, we regret the fact that the final text does not make references to the previous General Assembly resolutions, especially Resolution 77/238 on the treatment and on countering the global problem of drugs for a global, integrated, and balanced approach. This is the inclusive, human rights-centered approach which is absent from the resolution that we're adopting today, to a great regret. And we note that the amendment proposed by Mexico, and we hope that it will prioritize putting in place balanced, coherent, and inclusive approaches that are needed to counter non-medical use of synthetic drugs. We also note our concern due to the absence of a reference to the Human Rights Council Resolution 52/L22 on the contribution of the Council and the incidences of drug policy on human rights adopted last April by consensus. This resolution tackles essential questions with regard to risk reduction with regard to synthetic drugs, such as aspects to the risk reduction in the proportionality of punishments and going into the impact on women and racial discrimination and the concepts regarding the implementation of all drug policy, especially specific actions on synthetic drugs. There's a need for everyone to work together with all UN agencies, and they need to address human rights issues and address the health and criminality related to drugs. We therefore call upon the expertise of the WHO, the UNDP, UN Women, the UNHCHR, UNICEF, and UNAIDS. We call upon them all to enhance their expertise and technical assistance for member states in collaboration with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in order to fight more effectively against synthetic drugs used for non-medical purposes. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Switzerland, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom.
And thank you, President. On behalf of the United Kingdom, I thank the representatives of Philippines and Hungary for their work on the great facilitation and of the important resolution A/78/L.14. We are happy to join consensus on this resolution and welcome the opportunity to set out our position. The UK recently published a white paper on international development which reiterates our commitment to this important issue, including through strengthening WASH and climate-resilient health systems. We were founding members of the WASH in Healthcare Facilities Global Task Force, and we work with government and partners to support strong systems that provide resilient, sustainable WASH services for health. We therefore welcome this resolution, noting its focus on uniting and reinforcing national, regional, and global efforts towards progress under strong national health leadership. However, we are concerned the resolution does not sufficiently address some important cross-sectoral issues. We regret that there is no mention of climate resilience, despite the contribution of WASH services to more climate-resilient health systems. And we note intergovernmental agreement on the importance of climate-resilient water supply and sanitation at the just-ended COP28. The resolution also does not adequately acknowledge the issue of antimicrobial resistance and the role of WASH in healthcare facilities play in combating this growing threat. Finally, although there is language on specific impacts on women and girls, it is limited and does not sufficiently recognize the relationship between WASH, maternal and newborn mortality, and access to quality sexual and reproductive health services and rights. However, we look forward to working with our partners and member states to press for progress in achieving SDG 6 and other interlinked sustainable development goals and access to safe, sustainable, gender-responsive and climate-resilient WASH, waste and energy services in healthcare facilities. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia.
Thank you, President. I deliver the statement on behalf of New Zealand and my own country, Australia, in regard to the adoption of A/78/L.24. We thank the United States for bringing forward this resolution on an important and pressing issue to address the ongoing health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs. We appreciate their ongoing leadership on this matter, particularly through the establishment of the Global Coalition to address synthetic drug threats. We continue to make every effort to increase global cooperation to address the challenges posed by synthetic drugs, and we will continue to push for increased cooperation and collaboration on this. We are pleased to have seen this resolution adopted and at the same time welcome efforts to try achieve consensus. We look forward to continuing this discussion through the Global Coalition and at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs in March next year. We welcome the vital calls made through this resolution to improve access to controlled substances for medical and scientific purposes, increase information exchange, and the encouragement to explore innovative and forward-looking approaches to combat this dynamic threat. However, we do believe the resolution could have been strengthened with greater language on public health, human rights, and harm reduction elements of drug policy. This was a missed opportunity. Australia and New Zealand take a balanced approach in responding to and addressing the diverse elements of the world drug situation. It is imperative that any response to this particular threat appropriately focuses on public health while safeguarding human rights. We look forward to continuing to contribute constructively to all elements of this important work. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Australia, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you very much, Madam President. In the fight against illicit drug trafficking as well as drug abuse, my country has always been at the forefront. While using their lives in this struggle, Iranian law enforcement forces fought courageously and dedicatedly. The Islamic Republic of Iran promotes a drug-free world. The recent seizure statistics by Iran's anti-narcotic police, particularly since 2021, show the rampant increase in the amount of amphetamine-type stimulants, especially methamphetamine, across the eastern border. Given the situation of Iran as a frontline country, this transformation of confiscation patterns can be alarming. The surge in synthetic drugs is contingent on the increase in import, export, and illicit trafficking of precursor chemicals. Therefore, it is our common and differentiated responsibility to comprehensively address the diverse aspects of the world drug problem, with a special focus on preventing and countering the illicit production, manufacture, diversion, and trafficking of synthetic drugs, their precursors, and other chemicals used in their illicit manufacture. It should be highlighted that Iran strongly supports the principal role of Commission on Narcotic Drugs as the policymaking body of the United Nations, with prime responsibility for drug control matters, as well as the treaty-mandated role of the INCB and its monitoring function. Madam President, regarding the process, I would like to highlight a few points. My delegation has actively and constructively engaged with the negotiation process of the draft resolution L24, entitled Enhancing Action at National, Regional, and International Levels to Address the Global Public Health and Security Challenges Posed by Synthetic Drugs, since the outset. Despite the constructiveness shown, some key elements requested by my delegation, aiming to bring balance to the text, were streamlined by facilitator, including the necessity of addressing the importance of removing restrictive and financial impediments, such as unilateral coercive measures, to effectively address and counter the world drug problem. We have also requested the inclusion of a specific paragraph that recognizes the need to promote the provision of technical assistance and financial support to developing countries, including the provision of equipment and technology for detecting, identifying, and analyzing new synthetic drugs. Unfortunately, this was also omitted from the final version. Madam President, with that, the Islamic Republic of Iran, in a spirit of constructive engagement, joined the consensus for the adoption of Resolution L24. However, my delegation disassociates itself from preamble paragraph 8 containing the reference to Resolution A/77/238 included in the amendment proposed by Mexico, since my delegation voted against such an amendment and the resolution. Since I have the floor, Madam President, I want to reference to another resolution. In relation to the resolution titled Sustainable, Safe and Universal Water, Sanitation, Hygiene, Waste and Electricity Services in Healthcare Facilities, contained in document A/78/L14, I would like to thank the delegations of Hungary and the Philippines for facilitating the process of negotiation of this resolution. I would also like to submit that the consideration and implementation of the said resolution by the Islamic Republic of Iran is subject to its domestic laws and national priorities, as well as the social, cultural, and religious values and specificities. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Cuba has a zero-tolerance policy on the production, consumption, and trafficking of drugs, the essential pillar of which is a preventive approach that guarantees that our country is not a producer nor a transit country for illicit drugs. We have a firm commitment to the international legal framework for drug control, which must continue to be made up of the 3 UN conventions on drugs, the Narcotics Commission, and another relevant body. We recognize the plan of action adopted by the General Assembly in 2009, the ministerial declarations of 2014 and 2019, and the UNGA outcome document on drugs. We also recognize the guiding role of the UNODC within the United Nations system in this area. International cooperation is the essential means to address this scourge on the basis of a common shared commitment from all states, strictly in line with international law and in line with the principles of the United Nations Charter, such as the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states and non-interference in their domestic affairs. In addressing the world drugs problem, we must avoid the use of terms, the definition and scope of which are not clear for all member states. We are not in favor of terms nor action that might undermine the current drug control regime. Madam President, the production of synthetic drugs is an emerging phenomenon within the world drugs problem. As such, it must be combated within the regime of the current control system. We hope that this resolution will contribute in this regard. We are convinced that only through international cooperation will our countries be able to address this scourge. On the basis of these reasons, my delegation that was involved in the negotiation process for L24 constructively abstained in the voting on the two amendments contained in documents L31 and L32 on resolution 77238 that is referred to in and the amendment that was adopted. My delegation expressed its serious and legitimate concerns at the time, which remain fully valid. Resolution 77/238 doesn't represent the basis for a balanced approach to the world drugs problem. This basis must continue to be the omnibus drugs resolution adopted by consensus at the 76th session. In any case, Cuba will continue to promote all cooperation with relevant international bodies on the basis of an international legal framework for drugs control, and we will continue to rigorously implement our zero-tolerance policy to combat this scourge. I would ask this Secretariat to ensure that this statement is on the records of this meeting. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, President. Considering the importance of resolving the global drugs problems and its certain aspects, including synthetics, our delegation decided to adopt the resolution as a whole, despite the changes introduced to PP8 by Mexico. Our position on this paragraph was reflected in the negotiations clearly and in our statements before the vote as well. That said, in order to have the utmost clarity and to avoid any attempts in bad faith to cite Resolution 77/234 in Vienna as a consensus-based resolution, we have the following to say now. Considering that the Mexican amendment in PP8 went through in the adopted resolution, the delegation of the Russian Federation disassociates itself from the consensus on this paragraph on the whole. In the changed view, this paragraph does not reflect our positions or approaches. I'll note separately that Russia will continue to believe that the resolution 77/234 is not consensus-based. That resolution does not consider the principled stance of many states and cannot serve as a basis for international cooperation, including on matters of fighting synthetic drugs. Our delegation will continue to hold to this line, including in the forthcoming medium-term implementation review, which is slated for March in Vienna in the format of the next session of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. Thank you, thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iraq.
Madam President, my country's delegation wishes to reiterate its position on the adoption of the resolution countering the challenges in document A78/L34.
enhancing action at the national, regional, and international level to address the global public health and security challenges posed by synthetic drugs. We thank those who presented this resolution. However, we express our sorrow that such amendments have been implemented, namely to the preambular paragraph 8. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Iraq, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Colombia.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Colombia supported this important draft resolution on synthetic drugs as well as the amendments proposed by Mexico. We wish to underscore the shortcomings that characterize the current approach to the world drugs problem, and we wish to reiterate that this cannot continue without substantial modification. Our country has moved towards a national drugs policy prioritizing the preservation of life, dignity, and human rights, as well as public health, peace, and environmental